You're watching Byline Wilmington on CBS 10 WILM. Here's your host, Don Ansell.
Dr. Tim Markley is joining us for this full half hour on Byline. This morning, the new superintendent of the new Hanover County school system. We're talking about making recommendations to the board. Can you see a situation where a board might overrule a policy decision that you might recommend?
Sure. I mean, if you stay with the district long enough, there's going to be an issue that you may have one opinion on and they have a different opinion on, and that's fine.
Have you dealt with that in the past?
Yeah, it happens, and as long as it doesn't happen too often, it's just something that goes with the job.
How hard is it to keep the support of a board that has some very different and often opposing ideas on how the education process should be carried out in New Hanover County?
It can be difficult, but it's really about making sure there's good communication and that you're talking to all folks, and that it doesn't appear that you're talking to just one group and not the other group. All the board members want to be informed of the issues, even if they agree or disagree with maybe where I think we should go. I think if they're informed and they understand where I'm coming from, it makes the process easier. And if they decide at some point that the decision that I make is not the one they want to agree with, that it's nothing personal. They have their opinions, and it's my job to make the recommendation and then implement what they finally decide upon.
Is it getting harder, I guess we could say relative to what, but is it getting harder to educate children in public schools?
It's getting a lot harder, but there seems to be a lot more regulation, a lot more paperwork, a lot more red tape that goes with it. I can remember when I started teaching over 2 decades ago, there was no testing. We've added a testing component. Then we added a federal.
Is that a good thing?
There has to be some accountability.
Yeah.
When you look at budgets, we're the largest part of the state budget. We're the largest part of the county budget. So there needs to be some way to measure how effective we're being. Then
the issue came up of our teachers teaching to the test rather than to try to educate kids, you know.
If you're testing what the curriculum's supposed to be, then that's not a problem. But then we get the federal government coming in and saying, well, now we're going to do AYP on top of whatever the state testing is, and we've added another layer. And then we add all kinds of rules and regulations to that up and beyond. And it can be very difficult for teachers then to perform in the classroom when they've got all this paperwork mandate that they've got to follow. So the accountability piece I think is necessary in terms of, because we're such a large part of those budgets, but I think it may have swung too much to one side, and we probably need to swing back a little bit.
Well, it's so different today, and I've been in classrooms and observing, and then when I was in school, yes, 50 years ago, 50 years ago, the authority was pretty absolute in schools when I was there, and parents, you just supported the school system no matter what. Today, it's a different picture. The authority of teachers and school officials is so dramatically different today. And then, I mean, there was a pretty strong dress code when I was in school. There's technical distractions today, cell phones and texting and handheld computers, and what teachers can and cannot do and say is an issue as well. What are your comments on all that?
Well, our kids are different than we were. I mean, when you and I went to school, we had 3 channels to watch when we went home.
Right.
Now we've got 300. Our kids have very different learning styles. Their attention spans are much shorter than when you and I were there. We also keep kids in school that we used to, when they hit a certain age, they would drop out of school and go to work in mills and factories, but those jobs don't exist. So we're keeping kids in school, and it's a good thing, and keeping them in longer. Our teachers do a great job in dealing with a lot of those issues that we talk about, a lot of the learning disabilities that may not have been present when you and I went to school in large numbers, and they're continually getting additional training. Our teachers deal with those things today that just simply weren't in the classroom.
Is it harder to be a teacher today than when I was in school? Way harder, isn't it?
It's much harder.
Yeah. Has the pay kept up with?
When you look at our pay, teachers haven't had a raise in several years because of the state budget. When you look at when they were getting raises, they were just starting to get up to national average, and then it stopped because of those budget issues. So in terms of where our teachers are compared to the national average, North Carolina still tends to be behind where the rest of the country is.
What about regionally? When you talk about the states in this region, do we measure up there, or are we behind as well?
We're close in the regions. I don't have the exact numbers for states.
So make it hard
us.
to recruit,
Well,
to attract teachers?
We're
good teachers?
fortunate in Wilmington. We have a great university, UNCW, that provides a lot of our teachers for us right here. Quality of life issues here in Wilmington will draw folks here. And when you look at North Carolina, like other states, sets a state pay schedule. So a teacher in Wilmington has the same pay scale as somebody in Charlotte. Then each county can supplement that a little bit. And our supplement is a little bit higher than the counties around us, which helps us in terms of recruiting as well.
What about all the debate about teacher tenure and measuring teacher performance?
North Carolina's tenure law basically says you've got to teach 4 years before we award tenure. As an educator, I should be able to figure out within that first 4 years if you've got the skills in order to be an effective teacher. And then tenure becomes not a reward for service, but a reward for ability to teach and perform.
So you have to be, administration has to be very vigilant in the first 4 years of a teacher's career and evaluate them very carefully to make sure that tenure isn't given to a teacher that isn't performing.
Correct. And like I said, that awarding of tenure has to be, I think, from the principal level and the school district level, one based on the merits of the teacher, and not just simply because you've been with us for 4 years.
What's your biggest challenge as superintendent of schools?
Resources. In these times of tough budgets, making sure that I've got the resources for the students, and then being able to allocate those resources where they're needed the most. We have some very high poverty areas in the county, and I've got to make sure that those students coming out of those areas have the resources they need so that they can catch up to other students.
We're going to talk about graduation rates and what's the figure now and what's the superintendent's goal when we come back. Stay with us.